If you've been feeling like there's a thorn in your side and something nagging at you for years, months, weeks, or an inordinate amount of time and you don't know how to process it, this is an area of study that will very likely help you. And by the same token, on the positive side, if you have a aspect of growth or something you want to unlock within yourself, this is something that can help you as well. Now, before we get into these specific techniques, let's get a little bit in understanding about, me and who's going to be presenting it to you. So, I've been a professional astrologer for the better part of a decade. I have manifested, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars in capital. I've gone all over the world. I've taught many people this. I've done almost 100 readings this year to date. And I have done readings for people who are from multi-billion dollar asset managers all the way to Hollywood actresses. And, if you check me out on the gram, I'm always posting and I've gone viral and done millions of views on single videos on every single platform together. And I've done it with these methods and unlocking my internal gifts. So, with that being said, let's talk about what we're going to talk about. Now, as you can see, we did a little background. I've done a handful of things with astrology. It's one of my most favorite of the, I guess you could say, I hate using the word woo-woo, but the, occult arts, if you want to put it like that. And, it was pretty cool. So, once again, what we're going to be going over is the areas of studies and kind of how I combine them, which is astrology, somatics, chakras. And then I'm going to be telling you how you can actually utilize it, get into that part pretty quick. And then we are also going to be doing a live example with someone's chart explaining how it feels, what you can direct it towards, and how you can really expand and really actually utilize these things within abundance of, you know, opportunity. And then after that, we will have things you can do with it once you've learned all this. And I'll show you either how to expand on your own, or if you want to work with me in some way, shape, or form, I'll show you how to do that too. Now let's get into it. So, one of these important things that you really need to understand with this is astrology, the astrological chakras, and then somatics, right? So, astrology, I like to say, is the energetic understanding of the world that we live in. I got a lot of theories about how planets and how we don't really understand that much about gravity and what it influences, even with our own minds and mental understandings, because of the frequencies that certain spaces resonate at, as well as certain celestial bodies resonate at. And when they get together and have their influence on our own planet, blah, 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 that is how they kind of create their influence on us as an individual, right? So, some of the things we're going to need to know about astrology is the houses. For example, you can kind of, if you were to look at the houses from a perspective of, I guess you could say, like, this is how this person grew up, this is how that person grew up, and the influence that that kind of has on a person. That is essentially how you can really apply the houses in your day-to-day life, but we'll get into that. So we're going to need astrology, specifically the houses. The next thing we'll need to understand is somatic or somatic healing, which is understanding the neuromuscular connection between certain experiences. And if you've ever heard of the term or the book, The Body Keeps the Score, this is essentially what that is based upon. So, with that being said, we are essentially applying those two things together. And if we understand the concept of the body keeps the score, when we get over to my little gift from my higher self, or this incarnation's invention and gift to the world, is if the body keeps the score, then where does it keep that score? And if we look at this chart, which is basically an expanded view of the astrological house systems, it gives us an inclination of where you are most likely to store that within your body, right? Because a lot of people have seen that image of, basically what this is, which is the signs correlated to the areas of the body. But one of my huge distinctions of what I kind of, been shouting from the heavens for years now is that Western astrology is not based on stars. And if you were asked the question next, what is it based on? It's based on the actual house systems. So, with that being said, if it's based on the house systems, then identifying what sign correlates with which area of the body is purely based on, your houses. And your houses change. They're at different degrees, they're at different understandings, they're at different signs, right? So, with that being said, looking at the houses, for example, it's like if you're an Aries rising, cool, it's natural aligns with that image, you know? But if you're a Leo rising, it would be different, right? So you would have Leo in the first house, Virgo in the second, and so on and so forth. I don't exactly apply degrees to the solar map because it's too complicated. I will when I get like an automated tech version and people can apply different house systems. But for, you know, simplification purposes, I apply the, whole sign or, yeah, well, no, yeah, this would be technically be whole sign, but whole sign or equal house adjacent method to this, right? So with all that being said and all this being a combination of what's going on, you need to understand the houses from astrology, obviously your chart, but we'll get into that. You need to understand the basic concept of what somatics is, which is the neuromuscular connection between the body, which we'll get into a bit deeper when we actually talk about the examples. And then you just need to be able to see and kind of visualize this interpretation of the chart itself, right? What I call the solar map, because it helps you literally see the system your soul goes into, or in other words, your solar system. So, once again, going back to that other example when I kind of got ahead of myself previously, is that when we are talking about the houses and how you can kind of interpret them, you can sort of look at them like a house that people grew up in, right? And how people are influenced. So if we were to look at the first house outside of this chart itself, we would look at the first house almost like a very motivating, a very like go-getter type of energy, right? So this is the house you can for example, purposes, you can kind of imagine like the Ball family, like Lonzo Ball, Lamar Ball, like a very, very like go-getter. This is our brand. This is who we're gonna be. No pun intended, big baller brand. And it basically pushed them for excellence in a very physical and energetic pursuit of what they could be, right? Like they were trained to be excellent, to be first, to be leaders from birth, right? So they're kind of like that very go-getter alpha family that wants to pursue sports and being the limelight, XYZ, right? So if we expand on that a bit deeper, maybe we go to the next house and we go to more of the second house, which is correlated to the sign of Taurus, in this case particularly, you would see that as being a relatively chill family for the most part, but they're very focused on comfort, their values, and they pursue very, safe and focused actions on a lot of the monetary endeavors, right? It doesn't necessarily rule investments per se, but that would be a house of where it's like, you do this, you get a good job, you plant seeds, they're 10 years old with a Roth IRA. They're expanding their investment accounts. They know what money is. They know how to have a stable job and they know how to enjoy themselves, right? Because maybe they started working at a very young age. Maybe they were pushed to focus on actually, having that after school job. They were focused on really expanding and planting the seeds for their investments. So by the time they graduate, they had a dividend portfolio that literally pushed them to have passive income by the time they went to college or something like that. Like planting seeds and doing the most generic things in a slow way where it's like they seem lazy, but they understand the idea of compounding, right? So this would be the house of where it's like your dad's a doctor, your mom's an accountant. Like this, they do very, very like practical things, but they're going on a new vacation once or twice a year. They're going to a new place. They're always enjoying life and going to, you know, maybe not different restaurants every time, but they have a nice little rotation of what they do every Friday night on a routine basis. And then if we were to go, without getting too far into examples, into the third house would be a very airy house. It would be a very like, hey, check this out. Look at this. Look at that. Look at this. Look at that. Like maybe their parents are artists or their parents are, door to door salesmen, or they're someone that doesn't exactly have a concrete career because they like to be free, right? They don't exactly own their house. They're that kid you knew that grew up in a rental and their, parents may have a different idea on what it is to be a union, just not that they didn't want to get married, but just because they're too distracted to fill out the paperwork, right? But they're always in a space that kind of keeps you on your toes a little bit of where they're trying to figure out constant ideas, and it's almost like that ooh squirrel energy. So that just kind of gives you an example of what the houses are like and how they could influence someone who is experiencing that space, or for example purposes, growing up in that household, right? So with that being said, once we understand that, we understand the next thing. So once we get into the next thing, we can begin to weave it all together and really sort like begin to entertain the framework of what it looks like to apply all of this together. And when we apply it all together, you can see how these different areas of life can influence you. And once they influence you in the external world, almost like that child in an upbringing situation, like we discussed earlier, you can see how those experiences can be uniquely applied to you and your own chart, and you can begin to see where you store them inside, which starts the entire journey of the question we asked for of what is that feeling that's nagging you, right? So if that actually resonated with you, I want to take a moment right now to ground ourselves a little bit, get both feet on the ground. If you're watching it, sit up straight, take some deep breaths in, breathe in through the feet, feel that energy go up. When you're ready, release through the hands and the head. And on your next breath, breathe in through the air, which is breathing in through your head and your hands. And exhale through your feet. Now, notice when you breathe like that, and you can return your breath to normal now. Identify what aspects of your body you felt blockages. Now, as we discussed from the link between these two, which is somatic healing or the neuromuscular connection between the whatever's stored in your body, it's not just blank, haha, he, this is a blockage, you know? What it is it's little kinks, little things that are misaligned. Because when you truly sit down and you meditate, what's one of the first things you do if you're laying down? You're trying to find a comfortable point. But what is a comfortable point? The comfortable point is balance. The comfortable point is alignment. So when you're sitting down, like personally, what I'm feeling right now is I'm feeling like I drove a lot today, right? So what happens when you drive a lot today? You got your left foot, don't bust my balls, old people. I drive an automatic car, sorry, but you have your left foot resting, and you have your right foot moving around, right? So it's a little bit extended. So what does your body do to really open up and expand it, or I guess accommodate for that experience? It tightens up that muscle that you're using, which in this case would be like your right oblique, which is the muscle right above your hip, and it kind of creates that beeline that the girls be loving. But with that being said, that is the tension that I feel when I felt, misaligned, and I breathed and I actually took a moment of, I guess you could say, mindfulness of what's going on in my body. Now, necessarily, is there something that could be wrong in that space or something that I'm storing to? Not exactly. What I'm necessarily storing in that area of the body, which would be considered kind of like the cusp between your seventh and sixth house, is, well, actually, no, that doesn't align. I don't know why I said that. It's, funny when you do this, and you'll see why in a second, which is I created an imbalance between a working relationship, right? Now, I don't necessarily drive for work, but I was driving a lot today, which is working or doing something on a routine basis to get to where I want to go. Specifically, what I was doing today was I was driving. I was in one of the canyons climbing, for those that know me personally, and I was driving like far, and I was like getting to the point of where I was like, oh, come on, these stoplights, get over it already, because I wanted to get home because I was tired from climbing. I wanted to stretch. I wanted to take a shower. I wanted to do all these things, right? But the point is that was a direct experience of having tension in a space from creating an imbalance or overworking that part of my body. And what I have to do now is not necessarily go inside and experience what's going on in that space, but I do need to take note and actually stretch it, work it, balance it out. Now, if you were to feel something, you know, else, maybe like tightness in your calves or doing something, you may be traveling too much. You may be doing this, you may be doing that, right? But one of the most common things that you will probably notice and that you probably ignore nowadays is tension in your feet. So if you look at your feet, And we ground down again. The first tension that you may have overlooked is tightness in your pinkies, your pinky toes, right? From wearing shoes, from wearing tight shoes, not opening your toes, not spreading your toes. This is something that most likely everyone has. If you don't, you may have, um, bunions or I forget what the other thing is, where it's like your toes like almost disjointed, like your big toes disjointed and it's pointing in this way. Actually, I gotta look that up. Okay, I did look that up, and I actually, I already said it. My bad. I was thinking of when I said bunions, I was actually thinking of corns, but that's besides the point of the specifics, right? Like we can get into that if we were to do reflexology or something along those lines. But the point is, people have tension in their feet that they overlook because they are essentially overlooking, what I call your root chakra, which traditionally in the chakras would be a split between the eighth and seventh house. But what I call the root chakra is your feet because you are literally grounding yourself into this experience and without getting too deep into is this the dream or is the dream world real life and all that, kind of endless, you know, new spiritual person thought experiment where the answer is supposed to be an open-ended question when in reality it is, whatever you're doing right now is reality and that's what you're experiencing. But besides the point, using shoes and kind of having this tension in your feet is showing you that you are ungrounded in this life. You don't spend enough time grounding. You don't spend enough connecting to the root that connected you to this space to begin with, which is your spirit desiring to have a human experience that is putting you in this space to learn how to actually manifest in the physical world and how to actually manifest an experience in a space that is, you know, hard working. It takes time, it takes growth to manifest these things, right? So when we really identify in this space, the answers to the questions that you may get will be quite simple. It'll be like, take your shoes off more. They will be, stop being on your phone so much. You're being distracted. You should go out and like literally touch grass and literally ground and actually feel that connection to the planet that you live on, right? It's showing you that by ironically connecting your toes even more together and making them slightly less optimized or useful, that through connecting to yourself way too much, you're a disconnected circuit and you're not connected to the collective itself. And as you can see, this is the house that is correlated to Pisces, which is all about the collective conscious, the collective unconscious, and the unconscious realm that we're all associated with, right? So, with that being said, and without, my mind getting too off into different theories about the unconscious realm and how it applies to the world that we're into, let's dive in a little bit more into the broader applications of how you could utilize this instead of me just rambling on about specific aspects of the houses. But before we do that, let's do one last breathing exercise so you can actually experience what's going on within and get a better idea of how understanding this can help yourself. So let's reset. Once again, this technique of breathing is called bone breathing, which is essentially getting your alternating current within your own body and your own aura field back online from a conscious perspective and allowing you to really feel what's going on outside. So ground those feet down. Let's take a deep breath in through the earth. Feel that energy go up all the way through your feet, your ankles, your shins, your knees, your thighs, your hips, your lower abdomen, your solar plexus. And as you finally exhale, breathe it out through the shoulders, the neck, the head, and the crown. And when you're ready, breathe that energy back in through your hands and your head with the air. And exhale through all the parts of the body, all the way down through your torso, your hips, your legs, and just scan different aspects, allowing you to feel what's going on. And when it comes to blockages or something that you want to work on or something that you maybe want to, poke a little bit at to see if you can unlock something, just keep that in mind. If you want, you can pause this video or dive deeper a little bit. But let's get into it. So right here, I had a little fun with emojis, as you can see, but some of these applications are one of the common things that I come across as a practitioner. These emojis are more or less representative of how I feel about the experiences, so don't get offended if you look like I'm annoyed at helping people with trauma release. I love doing that. It's helpful doing that. But what I want to sort of align you towards is understanding the fulfillment that you could feel by going up these scales or building blocks of what you could experience, right? So, right here with trauma release, like, you know what it is. I started off the conversation with the entire point, which is you feel like there's a thorn in your side and there's a feeling that you're not releasing, right? Not because you don't want to, but maybe because you don't exactly know how to, right? And one of the first steps that I do with a lot of my coaching clients, particularly when I do these guided meditations, is that I make them immediately aware of the fact that just because meditation is your medication, let's not forget the whole thing about Western medicine, which is that medication is specifically prescribed as a symptom suppressant, right? So what's ironic about meditation is that making yourself aware doesn't necessarily heal you. It will release it into the conscious realm, which ironically makes it more painful, especially if you don't work on it, because now you know, right? And a lot of people, they kind of multiply their own pain because they're like, oh, this was so obvious. It feels so obvious. Yeah, it feels obvious because it's in your conscious world now. You can literally see it, you know? But how you actually release that or, eventually heal yourself is by literally training your subconscious mind as well as changing your frequency, which is what you frequently see, right? So what I do is I give people like 21-day journaling prompts. So where they can literally approach it from a different angle and literally dive deeper into what they're experiencing on a daily basis. So they can dive deeper, they can experience it, they can see it, they can write it, and then they can literally change their habit and actually dive even further into what they have going on. And to summarize what these journaling prompts do is they allow you to fully process, not literally ripping the band-aid off, but process and heal the wound by showing you what you're doing. You experienced it, you did it, and now you are literally moving towards yourself, your higher self, in a space that is not tolerating these traumas anymore and just letting them fester within. It's allowing you to expand, it's allowing you to release, it's allowing you to process those emotions that you may have not been aware of and redirecting you towards something that is much more beneficial for you. So, with that being said, once we kind of get through trauma release and healing, that's when we really get into those hidden gifts, right? Because when you release those things, your body's clear, you can really, really, really get into what you've been experiencing and what you've been going through. And getting through those blocks and getting into that higher state will allow you to have that intuitive flow towards things that are much more beneficial, much more abundant, much more powerful, and much more just happy on a higher level where you can truly grow into the experience that you want to, right? It's really hard to explain to someone that really hasn't experienced it, but it's literally going into yourself and almost waking up into just a new level of understanding towards something. And it is, it's that flow state, it's that intuitive state, it's that just tapping into the unified field or Akashic records or whatever you want to talk to, and literally just channeling a download of whatever experience you could possibly imagine, almost like you've done it for 1,000 lifetimes, when you're not necessarily using your past lives specifically yet, but you're using the conscious awareness field and the knowledge that the universe has and literally just channeling it through your own vessel because you're clear and it's something you want to do and you just purely channeled, knowledge from the etheric realms to do XYZ of whatever you had going on because you're not tolerating these things anymore. You're not experiencing these blockages, right? Now, when we get a bit deeper and we start getting hyper specific into these hidden gifts or what your higher self has to offer you, one of the most satisfying to the ego is experiencing what I call crazy past lives downloads. And what I experienced when I was kind of first developing this technique of really going inside yourself is back when I was, doing daily body scans a bit more frequently. I don't do them as often anymore because straight up it just got boring after you did it for a couple of years. It's like, I mean, I don't want to say you've seen it all, but like the original perspective that this was founded in was specifically trauma release and healing. And doing your daily scans from that perspective, it's just like, a lot of people that are on their healing journey think that it gets harder and harder and harder. And, sometimes it does, but eventually the entire purpose is for you to gain a level of balance and a state of peace that you have not necessarily seen before. So, with that being said, I'm going to need a sip of water before I tell you the story. So, probably a year or so after I discovered this and had it a bit more developed in terms of, like creating the guided meditations, guiding myself through meditation, doing my like crystal Reiki thing that I sort of invented along the way too, I decided to teach someone else what I had going on and combine it with a practice that they already had going on, which you may be familiar with. It's quantum, like I'm trying to think of the acronym, but it's like quantum hypnosis therapy, something that was created by, I don't specifically know, but I want to say Dolores Cannon or something like that. Like the OG, like indigo children, like wave of conscious people that are waking up and, uplifting the consciousness of humanity, blah, 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 blah. They were born in like the 20s or the 30s or something like that. But they were old enough to be on YouTube at some point. But, or young enough, I should say. But with that being said, I taught somebody to basically combine my theory of what I developed with that quantum hypnosis therapy. And essentially, what happened to me through this experience of basically like teaching that and allowing that, it released my consciousness in such a way that I could literally actually go into an experience of a past life, almost like a drone was flying into it, and really like combine these two of extracting like hidden gifts and past life knowledge and all the downloads and stuff like that. So essentially what happened was is they were like, you know, winding me down and getting me like deeper into myself. I essentially like saw myself riding on an Egyptian boat, kind of like down the Nile or something. And I was watching myself do a thing, nothing too much going on. Like it was back in those days. It wasn't outrageously creative. I was just on a boat doing my thing. But what happened was, is I started growing and growing and growing and really expanding myself, right? And as I was growing, I noticed that I was kind of like growing out of this boat and like the earth was fading away. And I essentially became a larger celestial body. And what happened was, is that was the connection of me showing a past life to my awareness of my highest conscious body in this realm. And basically, what it showed me is that my highest vessel in this realm is a part of a galaxy essentially. It's sort of local, sort of not. I don't want to get too specific about it. But what that led me to experience is it showed me where it was specifically in relation to where my current incarnation was, and it led me to a deeper understanding of how to actually utilize and implement your moon sign. But what it showed me about the moon sign was what I complained about earlier when talking about how people in Western astrology don't necessarily understand the calculations of what it is, right? Because Western astrology is based off the seasons, aka the house systems, and it is not based off the stars whatsoever, but it doesn't, exclude the stars if you know how to truly apply it, right? So, with that being said, what it showed me was the depth of one's moon sign, which it shows them the connection of where you may have experienced a past life and where you incarnated from in order to extract your mentality. And I went on this whole mental rigmarole of basically learning this knowledge from a past life and my higher self showing me a more evolved version for this life and actually applying that now, which is going deep on your moon sign. I'll link a video that explains it in the description along with numerous other things. But that's the depth and like the coolness of what it can really apply, where it's like, damn, I can go on this whole long vision, this whole long experience, and actually see how to apply that in my real life that's crazy. Like you literally just wake up and know how to do it, and it's just the crazy. Like you basically get to watch a movie from your health, from your yourself, and you get to see the experiences that your soul has taken you through throughout this life and your other lives and all that stuff, and you can literally apply that in your current life. From you basically get the knowledge and how to apply it instantaneously, and you get a cool movie and a story that you can tell people about in situations like this. Like it is cool. So that's why I basically did it this way, where I was like, fuck, we got to do some trauma healing. That's boring, but you got to go through it, and it really helps people. And to be honest with you, when I do my guided meditation for people, I've never not had somebody cry, especially in person. It gets crazy. And then you heal and you get some hidden gifts, which is, kind of like a stepping stone to this, where you're like, God damn, I learned all that about the stars in my past life. Like, you know, you're just on a wave for like the entire week when you have an experience like that. You can tell me like how I'm lighting up by literally saying it. But anyways, on to the next thing. So what I wanted to do is to show you guys, like outside of just explaining what's going on, how to specifically apply it to a unique chart. For this unique chart experience, I chose to do like a quick little career reading and how I do career readings, and on top of that, how I would kind of apply that for a meditation, because it's like I've done career readings for people, and it's like the whole thing of where it's just like pricing. If you don't charge enough, they don't listen to it, they don't apply it, and if they don't actually experience what that feels like to apply these certain aspects of themselves, they won't really do it, and it kind of just does nothing. So if you don't do all this to properly experience it, or go through 20 years or a couple decades of just not knowing what you want to do with your life, you don't truly value it if you don't experience the whole thing. So, with that being said, how I do career readings is I look at the house lords of the first, sixth, and then the 10th house. Why I do it that way is because I like to, see where your personality fits best, see what you should be working on a regular basis, and then obviously you got to see where your status and your all that stuff is aligning. So there you go. So with that, we have essentially we have you know Virgo in the first, we have Aquarius in the sixth, and then we have Gemini in the 10th. So personality wise, this person is seen as a very systems and a optimization oriented person. And for that, we want to look at Mercury, right? So Mercury is retrograde on the cusp of their 11th and 12th house. So when it comes to their personality, it's they their personality ironically fits best when they're talking about some like backwards ass opinion or line of logic about spirituality, and they like to do it on a very like broad social media type of platform thing, right? So it's a very like broad way. Their personality fits best when they're in a space of a very broad, caring way, like whether it's caring about the idea or caring about the person. Being that as retrograde, you'll probably, not necessarily know, but it's almost like they are healing their past ideologies or their past minds by getting these ideas out so broadly, right? So you can kind of tell that when someone has a house lord and there's a lot of planetary energies around where that house lines up, this doesn't exactly fit, but if it were to be a true stellium, their personality would be based around writing, a past life lesson that they haven't fully learned, so they need to focus on it now, right? So with Mercury retrograde being in this space, their personality essentially fits best in a, you know, feeling like their opinions need to be cared for, and also showing people different aspects of life that they may have not necessarily approached, right? So, with that being the space that they're kind of in personality wise, they need to be in a very, broad, almost preacher like space for ideas that aren't exactly respected as much as they would like, or the universe feels that they need to express, right? So that doesn't really give anything in terms of, career identifiers, but, you know, that's why we got to do the whole reading first. Now, when it comes to the sixth house, they have Aquarius, right? So when it comes to the house lords of Aquarius, we need to focus on Saturn for the most part, but also a little bit of Uranus, or as some NASA hardasses like to say, Uranus. Um, so with that being said, this person needs to work pretty regularly on their mental travels, and more specifically, I would say making their mental travels concrete and, repeatable and something that people can actually build upon, while also maintaining a semi-regular, I guess you could say, hmm, like a semi-regular, basically need to work on coming up with new, different, engaging ideas on a regular basis, not only for other people to keep them interested, but also for themselves, right? Because if I was like, look at it this way: if in this video I was all, this is how you do it, you do astrology plus somatics plus chakras with no story and no pizzazz, you would be like, yo, fuck this guy. You know what I'm saying? So this is kind of what it is right here, where it's understanding the balance and working on a regular way to create these ideas that are kind of like backwards and difficult to think about, but you care about them and you can see the passion behind it, and actually applying that in such a way so it can be repeated or properly experienced and actually applied by more people than the person actually expressing this, right? Now, when it comes back to the status brings us back towards Mercury. So this person is they're much more, at least from a career perspective, they're much more logical and rudimentary than they may think themselves. But it's important to note because that's who they need to be, right? They're seen as that person that's free. They're seen as that person that has a lot of time on their hands. They're seen as that person that spends a lot of time in the mental realm, right? So when it comes to like what I would suggest their career to be is like literally a talking head, a podcaster, or an influencer. Like it's very just someone that needs to be seen on a broad stage and actually experience travel in the mental realm and showing people how to do that themselves. Now, if we were to, say that, like literally, like I'm telling you right now, you probably don't like you're interested in like how I, did all this personally, but in terms of this person and what this person may think, right? They probably don't give that much of a shit about what I just said. They were just like, yeah, podcaster, yeah, influencer, whatever, right? Because they're hearing a reflection of what someone's seeing from their energies. They're not necessarily experiencing it, right? Which is why I emphasize this aspect of internalizing these energies. So, how I would come up with a meditation for this person's energy specifically is first things first, I would break it up. I would break it up into three separate meditations and I would make them all quick, except for the sixth house one. But why I would do that is you could see that this person is hella mercurial. And not only are that, they're Mercury retrograde and it's on the cusp between their 11th and 12th house. And not that it is necessarily a full on cusp, or actually, no, it kind of is. Yeah, it's you can see here it's in 28 degrees and I do cusp is like a 3-degree orb in each side, so it is kind of cuspy. So with that being said, and it being on the cusp of Cancer and Leo, this person is in a space where they are it's like they're they're in a very mercurial space of where they're like trying to, from a career perspective, poke holes in things and like tell you you're wrong, and like not necessarily from a like a I'm right, you're wrong type of space, but from a kind of like a steamy, just like, they're wrong, maybe they're not all the way right, and I want to explore different perspectives on what that is from a very like emotional, watery, fiery point of view that they don't exactly fully understand themselves. And they're like they're just in this space that they like don't fully understand themselves, but they just feel like, or they see a vision in a different perspective, and they don't really follow it to completion very often. So, that's why I emphasize like they should be in a space of exploring the thought realm and doing that on a very like public, you know, stage. So with that being said, it's how I would craft this meditation is I would do kind of like a distraction type of thing. of just getting their mind off of their own mind, if that makes any sense. And I would basically like guide them to experience, most likely through affirmations, where they are focusing in this space, and I focus them on the connection to essentially their ankles in a way, and how they want to apply their own systems and their own kind of like poking holes in things and being like, maybe this way, maybe that way. It's not like malicious, it's just airheaded, really. And get them to truly feel how their personality applies, right? So I would get them kind of like deep in through affirmations, and I wouldn't make this meditation longer than 15 minutes, just due to this person's own energies. And I would get them to focus like through affirmations to kind of create an orb of light on their crown chakra, to get it actually focused on that crown space to truly understand their personality. And then to see, depending on how much they know about astrology, I would say their house lord, or the, deeper connection, which is their ankles, right? I would focus them on their ankles and focus them on how their ideas are often misunderstood yet seen at the same time, and experience both sides through a few layers of breathing exercises where it's like they breathe in, they feel the warmth of their own care towards their ideas, yet they feel the need to promote them, and at the same time, have people experience both sides of what it means to them, and kind of reference like how their own emotional perspective on their ideas, and how they want to kind of share that perspective with others, and give them the gift of what it means for them to be seen as a person, and them to just be a person that feels like they have to explore the realm of thought and create systems to do so, right? And really like see the praise to be experiencing that, and then actually make them feel in a very like wordy affirmation space, because that's the house lord that we're working with here, and actually show them what it is to feel and experience that energy of what could be and what is possible. So that's kind of like what I would do for the first meditation. The second meditation would be a bit different. It would be very rudimentary, it would be very structured, and it would be very like just focused, right? It's just, how I normally do them, which is like I get people to conjure up their orb of light, I get them to travel down to that specific part of the body, and I get them to experience, the houses that I'm focusing them on, right? So it's like in the sixth house, we would probably spend a lot of time here focusing on experiences, potential health issues, as well as just like general comfort levels with things and what they like to rely on, right? Because what you guys may not exactly see here is that the South Node is smack in this sixth house, right? So when it comes to the normal house lord, which is Saturn, this person probably doesn't use Saturn very much, right? They probably like to use, you know, when it comes to just working on things, they like to think about creativity and inspiration and not necessarily building these things, which is not surprising because the South Node is all about what you're comfortable with, what you experience, what you do on a regular basis, and your past life gifts and the energetic realm that you just came from. So it's not necessarily super powerful in that way, in terms of getting people to build and really grow and all that stuff. But for this person specifically, they like to rely on that like unique inspiration aspect, which is very ironic because it's not necessarily designed to fuel their own ego. It's designed to kind of keep them in that space that they like, which is that etheric realm, that very like mental, cerebral, just thought experiment realm where they go, oh, wow, and they like to just kind of like experience the euphoria of their own dreaminess and just like letting time pass by from daydreaming. So that's kind of like what they end up doing on a regular basis. This person probably does you know, frequent highness just based off this alignment right here. But what they need to be doing on a regular basis is creating a very stable, tangible, routine understanding of how people can experience what they experience, right? Like that's the thing that's holding them back in a way. And for this meditation, I would make them sit here for a very long time. One, because they want to, but I wouldn't let them experience it the way they would want to necessarily. I would make them see what's going on from like an outside perspective, then guide them a bit lower in terms of like, you can still do that travel. Like literally in the house of travel, but you just need to do it tangibly, right? So like what I would recommend to kind of get out of the meditation space, what I would kind of recommend this person do from like more of a cerebral space is literally create a travel channel in a way of where it's like they are traveling, but they're traveling in the space they want to, which is the mental, the ethereal realm, where they're actually, getting out, getting busy, doing their fucking thing, literally like experiencing what different spaces give to them in terms of ideas and how they want to travel, right? So it's literally a space that people can understand while they literally, elaborate on what they're experiencing from their own internal space. But travel aside, and now that we've kind of gotten back out of the more rudimentary meditation structure, which is, you know, crown chakra, breathe in an orb of light, experience the space, experience the other space with the house lord, and then, kind of breathe your way back out and absorb all the lessons you need to learn for a more conscious awareness date, and breathe your way back out to your crown chakra and come to awareness. And, that's pretty much the more rudimentary meditation structure. But now to the mercurial meditation structure where we're focusing on Gemini in the 10th, this person, needs to be seen as someone who is ideological based. They're a bit airheaded, but they are adaptable and very good at learning new situations to grow themselves, right? So with this, we come back to Mercury on the cusp of the 11th and 12th house, and we focus in on the aspect of them needing to be seen for these ideas, for how they experience these ideas, right? Because Gemini is the masculine expression of Mercury, and what I like to call the exaltation, because I'm biased, the sun in Gemini. And with this space, they need to, be seen for them caring about their ideas and caring about other people's perspectives, but at the same time caring about how they want to realign people with certain perspectives on how they just experience ideas in general, right? Like, your thoughts are not your own. That's one of the most basic things a spiritual person can teach somebody, where they like to share these ideas about this, these ideas about that. And for this meditation, it would almost be a walking meditation, because this person needs to feel their knees, they need to feel their ankles, they need to basically do this, right? So for this aspect of getting into that meditative space and experience how they want to be seen for their career energies, I would get this person to do a walking meditation, eyes open, dark room, dimly lit, not too much stimuli, but at the same time an opportunity for them to truly feel what's going on with them and truly feel what's going on in a meditative state. Because when it comes to these mercurial people, they need to, ooh, squirrel. Like that's the best way to explain Gemini, not Virgo, but Gemini specifically, where it's like they need to touch, they need to have that toddler sense of what's this, what's that, I need to experience. So when they need to really get into that like physical, like I gotta touch this, I gotta experience this type of space, that's when they truly have the opportunity to expand, to grow, to feel, to experience. And if you can get a Gemini to feel, or someone with these mercurial energies to feel, they will respect you for a lifetime because you've showed them an experience. So, structuring it in this way and truly understanding the chart from a meditative perspective is, what's going on, how to get down, how to make these things happen, and really just, experience what is just that, you know? So I can't really put too much words in it other than that, but that's how I would structure the meditations for this person to truly feel a career reading. Because if I didn't do that and they got a career reading from me, even if they spent like, a decent amount of money to the point to where they would value this ideas and stuff, they would always be looking at me with some side eye and being like, really, bruh? I don't know. Have you looked at it this way? Have you looked at it that way? And they'd be completely missing the point for, 10,000 different ideas or reasons till they would actually forget that they even, purchased, focused, or intended to learn this type of information. So, next slide. Now, that's pretty much it, guys. That's basically the overview on how it works. If you want a PDF guide, for the solar map, I've linked it down in the description for you to get. And if you wanted something along the lines of, you got your solar map, you tried a meditation, you've done a full body scan, I have a whole playlist that explains this in more flashy fashion along with a guided meditation that I'll link as well. And then if you don't want to do it at all and you want someone to do it for you, I have a couple offerings below where you can get your solar map, or you can sign up for my coaching program, which is my cosmic coaching program, which is a customized 3 month experience for you to do what I was saying in the beginning, which is getting your meditations. You are, working out something, or you want to unlock, or you want to experience that story I was talking about of where you saw a past life and you learned something cool. Or, what most people want to do is they want to work, they want to get a deeper connection to themselves and really dive into those things, right? So if you want that, feel free to essentially just, click the link in the description, sign up for my coaching program, do my questionnaire, all that, and really just get ready to heal the way I just described, right? So with that being said, that is pretty much it. I believe so, unless I got something else in mind, which is no, that's pretty much it. Just, check out my coaching program. It's fucking phenomenal. And essentially what it is 3 months of you doing a custom guided meditation based off of your own chart and what you desire to heal, along with a custom 21 daily sequence of journaling prompts, followed by 3 more cycles of that based off of every 21 days where I send that to you. So if you want to work with me directly and really expand with these aspects of the chakras, click that link below. And, I'll see you soon. Bye.